Hang on, wait, what? First the stadium, now Newcastle United want to change the club crest. Oh my God. On this video we're going to look at why this change might have come about, why other clubs around the world have changed their badge and what it can mean for the growth of the football club and what we think of it. It's all coming up, Newcastle fans, so do us a favour and make sure you stick around. Welcome back to Black White Banter, ladies and gentlemen, from what is a very sunny, glorious St James's Park with that lovely view behind me. Yes, I still haven't sorted out the tripod, so I am holding the phone selfie style for another video with the temporary microphone, which I still haven't found enough money down the back of the sofa to replace. But there's bigger things than my theft and my stolen goods to talk about. It is the bombshell, and it is a bombshell, that's not exaggerating, that Newcastle United are now looking to change their club crest after 37 years with it standing as it does today. There's lots of talk about whether this beautiful place behind me, this cathedral, is ever going to change or whether it's going to be expanded, and now there's something else to talk about in this takeover project regime that we find ourselves under. And as you would imagine, in true Newcastle fan style, it hasn't been met with the best reception.
It's a procedure. Stay calm! Wait. Everybody calm down!
Now, I know a lot of my followers might not be season ticket holders, you might not be members, and you might be just looking at things on Facebook and Twitter from the outset. So this is basically how things have gone. There has been an announcement on the website that they are looking to revive, not change, the Newcastle badge to move forward and make it more digitally acceptable, digitally friendly, because we do have quite a busy badge compared to a lot, but we'll get into that in a second. But there is a survey that fans can complete. It was very minimal. You had to rank from 1 to 10 what you thought was most important to be kept. That was the seahorses, the flag, the banner at the bottom with Newcastle United written on. What else was on there? There was a couple of others, but you had to rank them all from very important to not very important. And then there was an opportunity to take part in attend a face-to-face fan consultation, which I've signed up for. I don't know whether I'm going to get it. And there was a video at the start, and I'll share a tiny snippet of that video on the screen now.
Small details don't show up on screens and are hard to print. The design is complicated, so it doesn't adapt to new ideas. It can't stand up next to sleek designs of other clubs, and that hurts, because we love it as much as you do. There are 3 different ways to tackle this. We update and improve our existing logo so it works in today's modern world. We revisit key elements of our past, blending tradition with forward-thinking design. Or we go for something brand new, giving it a fresh, minimal look for the future. Based on what we've heard to date, our view is to refine and revive. We've spoken to our fan advisory board, and now we want to hear from you. Which of the 3 R's would you choose? What do you treasure most about our crest? What you tell us will guide us in crafting a crest that embodies our history and ambition, so that whatever changes we make, our emblem resonates with all who call Newcastle United their own.
So that was just a small snippet into the video you watched before you did the survey, and to be totally honest with you, there was bits I didn't put on there where it talked about the complications of the badge and how difficult it is being so busy. Now, what I liked about that video, I'll be totally honest, from a transparency point of view, is the use of other clubs as examples. And you do, when they are on the screen next to ours, all it highlights for me as a fan alone who's proud of that badge, proud of this football club in general, is how good our badge is. And I've always said that. Like a Paris Saint-Germain, a Juventus, which is extreme, and we'll talk about them in a little bit on this video. A little bit soulless, a little bit quickly done, basic, but what they are trying to argue that basic is where the modern world is going, the modern world of sport and the modern world of entertainment. But I like how, after speaking to the fan advisory board, and they're going to get more advice, that they've ruled out doing a Juventus where they totally transformed their badge in what was one of the biggest shake-ups in European football for such a huge Italian club of probably the last 20-30 years, how they just went to a single J. It's not going to be that, and that one got blacked out, as you just saw in the video. That's a relief, because I'll be totally honest with you, is when this news first broke, my biggest panic, through that pride, through that identity that I see on a million people's legs tattooed as part of their skin, was stripping it down to something totally different and something very, very as is the common term, basic bitch. But they said they're not going to do that. They're going to potentially revisit old and revive what's currently there and make it probably a little bit simpler. But this just got me thinking. Lots of people have had their opinions. Twitter has been a meltdown. When is Twitter not a meltdown when change happens at this football club? I try and avoid it like the plague. Lots of pride being hurt by this, lots of questions of why do we have to change? How does it help grow this football club? So I did some research. So let's talk about what clubs have done what and how it has transformed some in this modern world of not just football, but entertainment globally. Now, whilst I just mentioned that the club are hopefully what are seeing ruling out going as extreme as what Juventus did back in 2017, I thought, why not use them as a case study to see why they made such a drastic change that did not go down well, such a historic, proud Italian football club, and why they did that and where they saw it go and what it's done for them. So Juventus' main marketing strategy when they changed theirs was, and I quote, to become entertainment enthusiasts as a brand, to appeal to wider audiences of different ages, different backgrounds. And what I find most interesting, and this is where I think Newcastle are going with the subtle changes, I do not believe for a second that Newcastle just want a badge that is easier to look at digitally, prints easier, and is simpler in its form. I think there is a wider plan here that comes from all the other changes we've seen around the world. The Juve mentality with this change was to go from one of the most successful Italian football teams in the world to one of the biggest brands. And there is my point, hook, line and sinker, where I think Newcastle United are going with this. A brand very similar to a Red Bull, a Ferrari. Lots of people who've never driven a race car but sort of feel like connected to those brands. If Newcastle United want to keep growing, and I've got no doubts about it, the people on the top floor of this building, that is what they want. They want Newcastle to be known in Saudi Arabia, in America, in Australia. An experience, not just a football team that plays in the north of England. Then the brand is important to that. And the brand as it stands right now is not quick on the eye. You've got to really take a glance. Are they seahorses? Is that a flag? There's lots going on. It's an incredibly busy badge. But what did this do for Juventus? Well, this bold move from Juventus was trying to get ahead of the trend. And I think Juventus, bearing in mind it was back in 2017, you could probably argue did start to do that and other clubs started to follow suit. But by doing this, they were trying to move into lifestyle branding over from football, more of a crossover. And they've seen success from it. As it stands today, Juventus have some of the biggest deals in Jeep. Very, very big brand. They've had a cartoon on Netflix. They've had a Netflix series. And yes, I know all of these things, Newcastle fans, you're going to say to me, well, you can still do that with Newcastle's badge. But the simplicity of Juventus with the J, they were trying to model it. It was actually launched, would you believe it, Milan Fashion Week, around the likes of Gucci and Prada, the Gucci looped circle. That is a brand that is synonymous with people all over the world and associated to luxury, to lifestyle, to fashion. And that's what Juventus did. Agree with it or disagree with it, that is their brand to this day. And they started to move, along with the signing of Cristiano Ronaldo shortly after me I just had, they moved into new levels of revenue and they have continued to grow year upon year upon year. And their growth from 2010 to 2024 is nothing short of incredible. Yes, they've grown in stature. They've been through relegations and whatnot and come out the other side of that. They have signed players like Cristiano Ronaldo. But as it stands today, it seems to be working quite well for them. But what about other clubs? So what have other clubs around our own country done? And maybe the wider Europe, the bigger clubs, as that's what Newcastle are trying to be. That's what this project basically is after just winning our first trophy in 70 years. Well, you could probably argue Newcastle are lagging behind. And I just want to keep going on record and saying that I am educating myself on changing a club crest and a club brand and what that can do for a team, and I'm just relaying that to you guys. I'm not saying I agree with any of this, but the likes of even Brentford I wasn't aware of. They went through such a drastic change back in 2017, just before their big stadium move. Their old badge was very, very complicated, very similar to ours, so much going on, and they went to a very simple B that looked like a wasp in design, something that can be printed, something that can be outlined and smacked onto things, and something that, if I was to look at the two badges, is probably a lot more unique than their one before. And that's a bit of a common theme. Arsenal, God, talk about being ahead of the trend. Arsenal changed their badge back in 2002 before I think they realised how how much they would be noticing a trend 10, 15 years later. They went from a lot busier to just the one cannon on that very simple crest. PSG, we've already talked about. Inter Milan, there was a storm when Inter Milan took not only the words football club off, which we'll talk about in a second, but removed the gold from their badge to make it simpler in design, but probably is more slick on the eye. And that's exactly what I see Newcastle doing. Manchester City, they once upon a time had a circular badge and then they lost that. Very similar to ours before the recent change, how we have a seahorse either side. That's what Manchester City look like with two eagles, I believe. Eagles? Birds? And then they've gone back to that circular design with previous bits of old badges. And again, Newcastle have had circular badges in the past, and I don't necessarily want to be part of that club, but I would understand where they are coming from. It. The point I'm trying to make here is that lots of football clubs have changed badge, and I've only named a few. Tottenham, Liverpool, in their design, so that design can appeal, just look crisper, I think probably is the word. More identified, faster as a brand, not just a football club, as a brand. Now it's time to put my own thoughts into this. Where do I see Newcastle going? Well, firstly, I do believe that there's something to Newcastle changing their badge, because Newcastle see themselves being part of a wider chain of football clubs under PIF much further down the line. You probably think, well, what do you mean by that, Matthew? Well, interestingly, Manchester City, who are owned by very similar owners from a very similar part of the world with big money, what do all the clubs that are under their umbrella seem to have in common? They all have a very similar design in badge that probably is on the eye, is recognisable quite quickly. Manchester City, New York City FC over in the States, and Melbourne over in Australia. Look at the three badges that I put on the screen. That would probably allow Newcastle to move into more football clubs, to grow the umbrella that currently sits under one brand, and that is the key, under one brand, Newcastle being the main one. The current badge can't really be adapted with the two seahorses. You would have to keep the creature the same. Changing the creature either side of a badge that isn't in a circle or doesn't have anything really where you can stick different things inside it, so to speak, makes that harder. That's just one of my conspiracies that I think Newcastle are going to explore to continue expanding. Another one from me, is there no opportunity, and I'm hoping to get invited to the in-person fan consultation on this, is there no opportunity to do what Liverpool currently do? Liverpool have changed their badge to just the simple bird without everything else going on around it, printed on shirts, but they still have the original badge as their formal club identity. So they have two, one that prints easier and looks more recognisable on merchandise, on football strips, but the main badge still stands outside Anfield at the Kop on the wall and will always be used by fans without it being incorrect. Is there no scope for Newcastle to have a simpler one and the original to keep a mix of fans happy? That would make sense for me, and if it works for a club as big as Liverpool, why couldn't that work for us? That needs to be something, in my opinion, that Newcastle explore, but I don't think it's going to be. So where do I sit on all of this? Well, look, very similar to not wanting to leave that place. If there's room to expand St James's Park, do it. It is still, in my opinion, one of the most iconic, scary stadiums in the Premier League. Regardless of what clamour for tickets there is, keep it growing, expand it where you can and go from there. I don't like this change. I am incredibly proud of that badge that so many Newcastle fans have tattooed on their skin. It is so unique, and in my opinion it's one of the most attractive in the Premier League. But I am open-minded to change, and when I look at some of the football clubs that have made subtle changes to expand as a brand, I fully trust some of the people in this building. Do I agree with the timing before three of our arguably biggest games under this Eddie Howe Saudi ownership to get Champions League? No, I don't. It's got Newcastle fans talking about something other than the massive push for this football club. I do like how they said they're not going to reinvent, they are just going to revive. I see Newcastle going down the route of Manchester City, where they went back to an old badge but kept notes of the current one in there without making it too drastic. I would like to hope that they do consult fans with the surveys and the sit downs, and that's not just we are doing this whether you like it or lump it, but I do feel a lot of decisions that are made at this football club have followed that way, that the surveys and whatnot are just to appease people and make people feel a part of a decision that's probably already been made by people that claim they know a lot more than us. Subtle change is okay. I'm not going to lose my head. I do think there's been a slight overreaction, but that comes from a place of emotion and pride like no other football club, I would argue, in Europe. We're a one-club city, and my God, does that revolve the heartbeat of everything we do and everything we feel. And changing something as synonymous as a badge is a bold move from Newcastle United, but when I look at how it can transform a brand and how it can continue growing this football club, I can sort of understand that it is a busy one and other teams are going for simplistic, and that's me trying to keep as much of an open mind as possible to something I don't really agree with and something I don't think right now is key. But the people at this club know better, and so many people on social media have actually said they've done stadium tours where on the tour it is talked about that Newcastle were going to change their badge once they won a trophy. So I found that really, really interesting. But Newcastle fans, get down and let me know your thoughts. This isn't a video I was expecting to be doing, talking about a club badge when we've got such a crucial run in, and that's a point of frustration for me. Hopefully I'll get to go to the fan consultation where I'll let you know, guys, let you guys know what comes of that. Just let me know. Are you totally against this? Are you furious? Or are you a little bit more open-minded? And has this video helped expand maybe your ideas on where it can take clubs? I'm really, really fascinated to get your thoughts on this one. So get down, and if you've watched this far, get Black and White Banter across all social media, and please whack that like, whack that follow, that subscribe, and drop a comment. It means the world to me, and I'll see you on the next one for what is a massive run-in of fixtures. Keep the faith as always, Newcastle fans, no matter what the badge is. Who are you, lads?